box.
No, it's not. It's not actually the box. It's my computer. It's not allowing me to log in. I think because of this thing here. But I was able to log in yesterday. I have the receiver thing in the computer, but
Yeah.
Sure. It's good when it works. They have a lot of stuff for you. You hide the sandwich in there, cookies. I want no critters in here, that's all.
He's getting set up. I have a question for you and Tim. Did you get an invite to the Central Committee meet and greet? It's coming up next week. You did not?
no.
Okay.
Do you know if they brought it or something?
No, it's gonna be, did you get one, Tim?
I'm sorry, what was it?
The Central Committee meet and greet at Sunnybrook Preserve, Tuesday, 27th from 6:30.
What is it,
It's just to get to
Is
know our
it from
Central
the Central
Committee.
Committee?
It's just to, no, it's just for the community to know
Okay.
the Central Committee members.
Okay, who's spearheading?
What's that?
Who's spearheading?
Notified Geauga?
45 Geauga?
Yeah. Did you know that?
No.
So you can,
You email it to email it to me. I can.
yeah, thank you.
Hope to see you there.
Yep.
I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Apologize to the crowd. This particular monitor for some reason has been a little flaky. Sometime during the presentation it may come up, sometime during the presentation it may go away. So, but for most of the presentation you should be able to read just fine on the front monitor. So. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started.
It's got, you got a handout for it too.
That's on my camera.
So, welcome to the 2024 tax budget hearing. Unfortunately, Jerry Morgan's not here, but I'm joined by Debbie Ashburn, and I'm Adrian Gordon, the budget finance manager. Want to thank everybody who helped contribute to this tax budget, including all the department heads, all the elected officials, Jerry, the commissioners, Christy, Debbie, people in the auditor's office, Ron Lighty in particular. Thank you for all the effort put into this. It's definitely a group undertaking, and I think we have a good tax budget moving forward for next year. At least the building block, the cornerstone of the permanent appropriation doesn't fall after the budget hearings that we have in September and October. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get going. So as you can see, the total 2024 tax budget is $139 million. Now this is approximately $13 million or 9% more than the 2023 adopted budget. This is due in large part to Children's Services Fund, setting aside a large portion of their funding for building of a new youth center next year. This accounts for about $6 million of that increase. There's another $2.2 million from Metzenbaum, which has increased its transfer out account in order to cover increases in its Medicaid waiver match obligations. Out of the remaining $5 million increase, just over $4 million is in the general fund, and the other $1 million of increases are scattered across various funds in smaller amounts. Revenue, however, throughout the county has been increased to cover most of the rise in expenses, but not entirely, as some of the expenses, obviously, that I mentioned for JFS and Metzenbaum our more surplus spending. The general fund portion is going to be 43.6 million. The general fund increased by almost 4.2 million in the 2024 tax budget versus what was adopted as the permanent appropriations for 2023 back in December. Almost half of that increase, about 1.7, is due to payroll account increases in the sheriff's office. Some of the other reasons for these extra expenses are an increase in the Board of Elections payroll and supply budgets in preparation for a presidential election cycle, increases in maintenance costs due to temporarily maintaining 2 campuses, and ADP payroll account increases. We'll break down those general fund expenses later on in the presentation. Operational transfers, there's about 4.8 million that we're looking at, are for emergency transfers, 911 funding, 800 megahertz communications, court technology, capital projects, debt service, grant matches, public assistance, family first, community development, and miscellaneous reimbursements. The 2.4 million of requests that have yet to be funded are as follows. There is 100,000 that we took out for personnel related expenses, all of which were requested by the maintenance department. 1.3 million were equipment requests. 840,000 of that was requested by the sheriff, and that was for 369,000 for 6 replacement patrol vehicles and 275,000 for replacement taser batteries and cartridges. 196 was for replacement lockers and bunk beds in the safety center. 355,000 was from maintenance for new tractors and vehicles. 105,000 from elections for a new ballot transport vehicle and high-speed letter opener. 30,000 was from the building department for a replacement inspection SUV, and 50,000 from maintenance for additional grounds service expense and electric utility payments. There was also $1 million in requests from accounts outside the general fund that are awaiting funding. This includes about 350,000 for ADP and the Computer Equipment Improvements Fund for various equipment requests, including a Meraki gateway, server cabinets, cabling upgrades in the annex, a software package called VMC Helix, which is an IT service management software, additional cloud storage, water leak detection system, and a new equipment transport vehicle. In that 350,000 that they gave me, they did not give me a breakdown of those expenses by the item. So it was just a blanket 350,000 that they requested that was to cover all of those items. 260,000 was from court technology for a new JWorks case management system, and 450,000 from the sheriff's office to add another channel to the 800 megahertz communication system. As this year progresses, we'll assess our ability to fund these later in the year, either in whole or in part, or make them a priority for the supplemental next year. Any questions on any of that? Okay, overall revenue obviously continues to trend up. Mortgage rates are at their highest level since 2000. High construction costs due to inflation and a persistent tight supply of existing homes on the market, and an expected collection rate of 98% on property taxes for 2024, as determined by the Budget Commission, reflects in a relatively flat property tax collection for next year. Sales tax continues to exceed projections and will be increased again next year, this time by $3 million. Interest rates are expected to remain high next year, which has led the treasurer to increase the income expected from the county's investments by about $1.5 million. Several fees went up by nominal amounts, but there were no budget decreases in revenue. Okay, at this time, I'll invite Debbie Ashburn up to talk a little bit about the revenue for next year.
Adrian gets to tell how we spend the money that I'm about to present. So we have about basically 10 sources of revenue, that are received into the general fund. And the tallest bar there that you can see is the number one funding, and that's the sales tax, and it's been number one. And it makes up almost half of the general fund revenue at about 20 million. The second, we'll talk more about sales tax later too, but the second highest source is the property tax at about, a little less than 22%, and together those two make up 70% of the general fund revenue, which is about 28.9 million of 41.9 million. The smaller ones include like the department fees and fines, property transfer tax, which is the fee charged when the property deed is transferred to a new owner. The interest income, which is up, that Adrian already mentioned, that is up about 1.5 million over last year. Other things under the other would be like rent, some reimbursements, our gas well revenue, auction proceeds. Then we have casino tax, local government tax, the prisoner housing from the out-of-county inmates, and then cost allocations. And money from cost allocations, that's kind of what we charge to the departments that are outside the general fund, say like aging. They are levy funded, but yeah, we charge them for their postage or a lot of their ground maintenance, that kind of thing. So a little bit more about the sales tax. This is the chart of the 88 counties that we have in Ohio. And sales tax was first imposed on the state in 1934 at a rate of 3%. That was expected to be temporary. Guess what? Permanent. And then by 1949, sales tax was the principal source of revenue for the state. And this chart indicates the different counties at the different percentages. So majority of the counties in the light blue, they have a sales tax rate of 7.25%. And the highest is Geauga at 8%. And the 26 counties that are in either green or yellow, which is where we are, Geauga, are at a 6.75 and or through 7%. And the lowest are in the dark blue, and they still remain at a 6.5%. There was no changes effective this year, increases. So, and as I stated last year, the sales tax in Geauga County is 6.75%, of which the county actually receives only 1%. The other 5.75% go to the state. In looking at this chart, this is the trends that we've been showing from 2018 through 2023. I don't have too much on 23 yet because the numbers are slow to come in because there's a 3-month delay. So the number that I just received for June was the number that was the revenue for March. So, but still, you can see the trend, especially January, February, where you got that last rust-looking bar. There, you're still seeing that it's still averaging higher than the previous years. So for March, which I just got in yesterday, we're up still about 75,000 over last year. So this is taking a look at the property tax. I think we were at 8.9 million, I think, that we received in property tax for 2024. And this is a breakdown of how we're going to spend $1 of that. For each dollar of property tax, 17% is received by the county.
Hold on 1 second, did I?
Did you skip one?
No, I think I did. Okay.
17 cents out of $1 is received by the county. The largest portion you can see in the blue is to the school districts at 55 cents out of the $1. The townships will come in at 16 cents. And then the other small, they make up, I think it's 12 and a half cents. They, the juvenile, or the juvenile,
Joint
sometimes-
vocational schools, yeah.
the joint vocational, the special districts, the municipalities, the library, and the park. So now I want to take a look at that 17 cents to see how we break that down within the county. So of the 17 cents, you can see only one area is in blue, and that's the general fund. So of the 17 cents, 4.5 cents goes to the general fund for the operation of the county program. Everything listed in green, which is the majority of the 17 cents, with developmental disabilities being the largest, those are all levy-funded programs. So those have already been established and voted on by the taxpayers. And so you have the developmental disabilities over at Job and Family Services, the Children's Services, mental health, the roads and bridges, the senior citizens, and the health district. I think I'm going to give to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so the side screen over here is working again, so that's fantastic particularly for this slide, because there's a big breakdown there. So what we're looking at here is the breakdown of the revenue that we've had for the last almost 10 years. Yeah. How did it go away?
Open sesame.
Brief moment, now it's gone.
I'm telling you, I was in here for like an hour yesterday trying to figure out why that lousy thing wouldn't work. But so as you can see up here, you got the blue at the bottom there. That's the property taxes, and for purple is the sales tax. So those are the two biggest portions of the funding for the county, and we like to budget revenues conservatively. This helps us control expenses and protects the county from surprises. The largest increases that you can see going from 23 to 24 are going to be the bright green color, and also the sales tax, which is in the purple. The investment income is that bright green. So that's up at the top portion right underneath the yellow part. So as a percentage of what it was before as far as the increases are concerned. Okay, so this is the available resources. So whenever we go into a year, we always, whatever the unencumbered carryover cash balance is, plus the calendar year revenue is the total resources that the general fund has to work with. So you can see over the last few years, we've hovered between 45 and 51 million. Next year, for 2024, we're estimating about 8.5 unencumbered cash carryover. Now that will vary slightly from what's on the paperwork for the actual tax budget. We don't have a place to put in any of the unexpended appropriations, which are always several $1 million. So what I have to work with in the actual tax budget document is the unappropriated balance of the general fund, which right now is like $2.6 million. And then once all the appropriations that are budgeted for 2024 come out of that, you end up with about $150,000 or some odd dollars left after that. So I don't have the ability to estimate those unexpended appropriations except for here, which shows that unencumbered carryover cash balance being $8.5 million. In addition to the 41.1 revenue that we're planning for next year, gives the general fund total resources of about $50 million, just slightly less than that. And that's an increase of 4.6 million over 2023. Okay, so on to the expenses. As I stated earlier, the 2024 tax budget is about 4.2 million more than the 2023 adopted budget. Once you take out all the transfer out accounts, and you also are looking at the amended budget over the 2024 tax budget, we actually have gone down about 300,000 from what the amended budget for this year is right now versus 2024 tax budget. The 4.2 million was the adopted tax budget. This is the difference between what we have amended the tax budget for, or the permanent appropriations for this year. So once we open up the next year, we see what the unappropriated balance of the general fund is, and then we're able to appropriate some of those unfunded or delayed funding requests that we get that I mentioned earlier, the 2.4 million worth of the delayed funding requests. So some of the assumptions that we had for next year's tax budget, the commissioners generously provided the county with county employees with a 5% increase for this year, as well as a 3% increase for next year. So the understanding is that there were going to be some pretty good increases in payroll that we were able to absorb. This year, the county is budgeted for no increase in the county portion of hospitalization. For 2023, we did see an increase in insurance costs being about 2.3% and a nominal increase in 2022 of about 0.6%. And the previous 2 years before 2022, though, there were slight decreases in the premiums. Any increase or decrease that will be used for the permanent appropriations will be determined once the renewal for next year has been revealed, and this number and how it's divided up is still subject to change. This year for the budget, we opted to initialize it using the 2023 adopted budget numbers. This eliminated the extra appropriations associated with prior year carryover encumbrances. This hopefully gave everyone a clearer picture of what their actual budget should be instead of them being artificially high due to the inclusion of that prior year activity. As I just mentioned, this continues our efforts to try and reduce the amount of unused appropriations in the expense budget. Over the last few years, the general fund and the county as a whole generally used about 90% of our appropriations. This continues to make budgeting difficult when you have 4.4 million plus of appropriations in the budget that realistically go unused. Although there are many reasons for why this happens, which some of the reasons are outside the department's ability to control, we continue to try and do a better job to control it. So here's a breakdown by expense category. You can see predominantly the expenses in the general fund are personnel related. About 75% of those expenses are related to salaries, benefits, and hospitalization. These things increased in the general fund by a little over $2.5 million in 2024 tax budget versus what was approved in the permanent appropriations for this year. Wage and staffing increases are mainly responsible for year-to-year payroll fluctuations. Some of the departments that experienced notable increases were in the sheriff's office, part of their bargaining agreement, as well as an increase in staffing. Looks like about 12 additional employees between June 2022 and June 2023. ADP personnel costs increased due to internal promotions, additional hiring of 5 employees between June of 2022 and June of 2023, and 1 budgeted vacant position for 2024. Board of Elections, due to the president, as I mentioned before, due to the presidential election staffing needs, which I took a look at their 2020 needs, what they used, and this is right in the ballpark. Maybe a little bit more due to the increases in the salaries and stuff of the various employees there, but it seems like it's in the ballpark. Maintenance due to several advertised but as of yet vacant positions, plus maintaining 2 campuses The prosecutor's office had an increase in their payroll, as well as our office, the commissioner's office, due to an increase in the staffing level at archives. They hired an extra person. The other $200,000 in payroll increases is scattered throughout the remaining payroll accounts in the general fund. Other expenses up there at 13%. That includes things like legal fees, utilities, fuel, travel and training, and advertising. Other expenses dropped about 7.6% from this year, or about $419,000. Contract services include items like building and grounds maintenance, cleaning and security. It's dropping by about $600,000, or about 15% from 2023. Materials and supplies, it's also reduced in 2024 by about $133,000, or 12%. And the equipment line is 1% of the budget between other and materials and supplies. It includes miscellaneous equipment requests for a number of general fund departments. So this chart shows the split of the general fund spending by category. Things like public safety include the sheriff, the coroner, and the building department. That's about 38.7% of the general fund budget. Legislative and executive, which includes the various departments, including the auditor, commissioners, archives, prosecutor, recorder, treasurer, ADP, maintenance, planning, board of elections, and the engineer. That's the tax map department that's in the general fund. And that's about 14.1 million, or 36.2% of the budget. Judicial includes the clerk of courts, common pleas court, juvenile court, probate, muni, and jury commission. And that's about 6.2 or 16.1% of the budget. Miscellaneous includes items for the Portage Geauga Joint Juvenile Detention Center payments, our annual insurance liability payment, youth center funding, postage, legal fees, and appointed counsel fees, and court of appeals. Conservation and recreation is the OSU extension in soil and water. That's about 1.6% or $600,000. The Veteran Service Commission is in human services. Where am I at here? Health is the health at 0.1 million or 0.2%. That is for the Bureau of Children with Medical Handicaps, requirement that the county fund a 0.1 mil to treat handicapped children in the county. So this is just a look of that public safety, the general fund expenses compared to 2023 versus 2024. So your public safety, your legislative and executive, judicial, conservation, recreation, human services, health, and miscellaneous. And how all those shaped out. Now this, again, is net of the 4.8 million transfers out. So there has been discussion about some of the various funds that the county has, and what the money is there for, and what it's intended to be used for. So just to kind of highlight some of the balances that we have, our Department on Aging has about a $2.3 million levy-funded fund balance. It has to be used for senior services, aging. At the end of last year, and I'm assuming again at the end of this year, potentially we'll be transferring funds to help build a new Chardon Senior Center. They're kind of in a temporary facility in Building 8 at 470, and as we transition out of 470, we continue to do that. We'll be finding a new place for that, which is the next item, the 1.8 million that's in the Senior Center Construction Fund. Now that is money from the sale of the Chardon Senior Center just down the street here, as well as the transfer from aging that they did at the end of last year. That will be used in conjunction with funds from the department to build a new facility. Currently, that's still in the architectural phase. We have about 17.7 million in the American Rescue Plan Fund. 10 million of that is planned to be used for the courthouse project. 6 million right now is planned, or at least in the process of being set aside for the McFarland wastewater treatment plant. 560,000 for the county water system, and 486 for the sewer tie-ins, which were in the Berkshire Heights subdivision. 650,000, which is currently unallocated, will be used, I'm sure, for a variety of other projects going forward, so until the end of that fund. 2.2 million right now is in the county facility bond retirement fund, saving for future debt payments or potentially paying that debt down and refinancing it at one of the various call points, which we do have one coming up in the next couple of years. 4.4 million is in the building improvement fund. This will be used to improve county buildings on Chardon Square. Again, we're in the architectural phase of that. We have 7.6 million right now in the capital reserve funds, phase 1 and 2. Phase 1 was this building, which we are very close to completing, and that money is planned to be transitioned to phase 2, which would be various buildings uptown, including the courthouse, and that, again, is still in the architectural phase. So just some notes on future planning. We are evaluating the status of various properties as we try and consolidate more of our operations. We want to be able to eventually move completely out of 470 and probably sell that property. We're looking to invest in the county buildings that we do have in areas where we're going to be staying, to ensure safe and convenient services for county residents without, shackling them with more debt. We don't want to have to take on more debt if we don't have to. We're minimizing the growth of Geauga County government and encouraging the prosperity of our residents in that, and investing more time and energy in what the county cares about and less about what they do not. So, with that, I will open the floor for any questions from anyone. Sheriff?
Adrian, we need to go meet with you on the employees.
Okay.
We've only added 2 employees in the last 3 years. One is the school research officer at Berkshire, and Berkshire pays for him.
Right.
And the other one's sitting downstairs.
Okay.
So I think you're going off that personal service schedule where we're looking at people that are retiring and then replacing them.
Yeah, and then that's entirely
And
possible.
It looks like, so I just.
Then there's some overlap there between the two
Right,
positions.
and I don't want people to think that we're adding 12 employees.
Right.
We're not.
No, yeah, I understand.
Thanks for the clarification, Sheriff.
Yes, I do appreciate that.
Is the senior center getting a whole new building, or are they just gonna remodel that building over there on Center Street?
Well, they've already remodeled the building 8, so that's where they're at right now, and that's intended to be a temporary position, temporary place for them. I think the plan was, if I'm not mistaken, to provide them with a new location, a new building.
That's right.
So,
Do they have a site where that's gonna be?
I don't believe so, not yet. I think it was gonna be around here, potentially somewhere, but
In this
where-
corridor of service,
area.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On the casino tax dollars, is there a little bit of a bump up since they opened up the sports gambling in January 1 of this year? Has that shown up an increase of revenue?
I am pretty sure that they are above what they budgeted for this year right now. I don't think that there's been a huge bump yet. Maybe, I'm not sure what sports were out at the time and whether or not one sport is more conducive to betting than another one, but I haven't seen a huge boost. So I don't know if that is going to take a little bit of time to get through the system. I'm not sure what sort of delay, because with the sales tax, there's like a 3-month delay. So I'm not sure if we're still dealing with that. I have not seen a huge boost in that though. So, but I do think that they will beat their budget of $1 million that they have set for this year. So,
Right, and we'll really get the true numbers in the first quarter of next year.
right, and we don't get that monthly either. We get, yeah, we get that quarterly. So we've only had probably one payment so far that has been affected by that. So, 'cause we haven't gotten the second quarter payment yet. So. Yes?
Yeah, Lindsay with the Women Voters. You mentioned the county buildings on the square, not the courthouse. So that is under, there's an architectural review going on now for those?
Not a review, the architects are actually working on it. So Then Design is the
Okay.
same company that designed this building is in the process of putting together designs both for the courthouse, the Department on Aging, and, potentially other buildings, remodeling or what have you uptown, so.
So is that considered phase 2 then?
Yes, that is phase 2, yes. And that's part of the $15 million settlement that was reached with the city of Chardon to invest on the square, so. And we're hoping to do that in conjunction with the American Rescue Plan funds. We're hoping to be able to do that without incurring any more debt. Yes.
Yes, Diane Jones, in reference to, let me just check this out, the payment plan. It was item 3, item 4, to provide financial transaction devices for county expenses owed to county officials and offices. How is that different from programs that were offered in the past? There for a while, there was some credit card acceptance, et cetera.
Yeah, historically, there's been 3 companies that the county has used to process payments.
Okay.
And they're the same 3 companies that we have right now, or that we're working towards. That's Forte, that's Catalyst, and then MSB, Geauga. So various departments utilize one or the other. I know the treasurer's office for property tax payments uses Catalyst as well as Forte. Water Resources use Forte. The health department, building department, Department on Aging, they all use MSB Geauga. So there's not really, this is just something that we have to do once every several years as the contracts expire with the various companies, and we're following the ORC on how to go about that, so.
Is there an estimated cost, percentage of, or a quantitative number that's available?
Yeah, most of the companies charge a convenience fee in the neighborhood of about 2.5%.
2.5%.
Yeah, with some of them have a minimum of $1.50. They're going to vary between the 3 different companies. So each department, as they determine, whether or not they're going to accept credit card payments, can look at the various agreements and determine which one's best for their department.
Thank you.
Yep.
But they tack on, they pass that charge on to their customers.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions related to the tax budget or? No? Okay.
All right. I have a hearing scheduled for 10:52.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you.
Adrian.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Our meeting next week, we'll have also solid waste next weekend.
Is that gonna be here? Yeah.
We have a slew of things next week. We have investment advisory the morning before your regular meeting at 9:15 here in this room. We have regular session at 9:30. We have the Portage Geauga Juvenile Detention Center Board of Directors meeting would include their tax budget hearing here at 11 in this room. And then your solid waste management district meeting is at 1:30 and it's on the second floor in the food.
Okay, good.
And then we're closed for 4th of July.
I think they were planning on taking a tour of the new facility over there. I
Yeah.
believe the other commissioners in Geauga County.
Jennifer sent us an email that says optional.
Oh,
If somebody's got to go, take it.
Gotcha, okay. Okay. Any other questions?
With that motion to adjourn.
Time is,
So,
All in favor?
Mike?
okay.
Bye.